Hi, I'm Jim Reinartz,
And I'm Danielle Bell.
and we're going to take you on a little walk in the bog along the boardwalk.
Yeah.
We know that it was a lake for so long is that there's a big ice push ridge at the edge of, almost rims the entire bog, and we're walking over it right now. This big mound of boulders that's pushed up at the edges because of the force of the expansion and contraction of the ice in the winter.
All right, so our first flower here is the marsh marigold.
Marsh marigold. In the buttercup family, which is considered, I mean, it's wrong to call them primitive since they're here today and they've survived, but they do have characteristics that are similar to some of the earlier evolving flowering plants, and all of the parts of a flower are clearly evolved from modified leaves. So the the petals of the flower, it's easy to imagine that they're brightly colored leaves. The male part of the flower, the stamens, if you look at them closely, you can imagine that they have a little stalk and that they're a leaf with spore-bearing parts kind of folded over around the edge. And in marsh marigolds, it's really easy to see later in the season. But the seed pods of the marsh marigold, if you look at them, this can be an assignment. If you look at them later in the season, you can absolutely see that they're a little folded over leaf bearing the seeds around the margins of the leaf. And those are all considered kind of primitive characteristics of flowering plants. Tussock sedge. Look at this. It's just coming into its new flower. Can you see that at the top?
Oh, there you go.
They're just beautiful. Look at the color of those.
Sun is really bright.
Danielle and I were just talking about how there's I don't think we have any grasses that bloom this early in the season, but we have several sedges that start to bloom really early in the season. And this tussock sedge is one of them. And here we have,
there's a good one.
We have lake sedge. Looks a lot like tussock sedge, but it's just generally coarser. And in fact, if you were only going to learn a couple sedges in Wisconsin, because they're so important and dominant, lake sedge and tussock sedge would be two that, especially tussock sedge. Carex stricta would be one that you'd want to know.
Yeah, so those darker lines that you're seeing, those are the flowers coming through.
I think we could sacrifice one. What's a good background for
Oh,
it?
that looks good. That's
Yeah.
better.
You see that little edges on the scales? I'm not sure I'm holding steady enough.
Yeah, you can see them.
But any of you who have been on walks with me would know that by now we'd all have our hand lenses up. And I can tell you, if you put a hand lens on this, it's just absolutely gorgeous pattern. And they have, well, probably too much detail. But one of the characteristics of, kind of conveniently, of both tussock sedge and lake sedge is that the sheaths on the leaves, the sheaths that sort of close the bottom of the leaves, are composed of these little fibrils that are almost arranged like a bird feather kind of fiber. You can see it really well on this. And tussock sedge and lake sedge both have that, and that's not at all common in other sedges. In fact, they're the only two I can think of right around here that have that. Leaved willow. Its leaves aren't spicy at all like sage, but it has leaves that look an awful lot like a sage leaf. And again, this is a female. Like most of the willows, they're real early blooming and early fruit producing. So this already has its capsules, and they're developing and will shed their seed before long. But unlike pussy willow and Beb's willow that are big, robust shrubs, this is about as big as a sage-leaved willow will get. There's some real pretty ones in here. That little opening is a nice sage-leaved willows. And sage-leaved willow is a pussy willow and Beb's willow. They grow all the way down to the Gulf Coast. They grow north of here too, but they're a real widely distributed species that can also be considered kind of southern, whereas sage-leaved willow is pretty close to the southern edge of its range here and is mainly a northern species. Oh, water's really high right now. Oh. The water levels this is about as high as the water levels in the bog ever get. The bog, water in the bog is so amazing. It was a lake for thousands, like we talked about, it was a lake for thousands of years. And now it's a lake filled with peat. And so the water level from the driest time of the driest years to the wettest time of the wettest years, the water levels in the bog fluctuate almost 3 feet from the highs to the lows. The entire map of the bog is going up and down to some extent as the water levels fluctuate. The way we can tell how much fluctuation there really is you have to have something that's anchored all the way down in that clay or glacial till below the peak. So it's not going to move as the water levels do. And our benchmark here is that little pipe, and there's actually two other, well, there's 3 pipes you can see there in sort of a triangle. You can see just the tips of those are sticking out. And it almost never rises above those 3 pipes so that they'd be underwater. And if you come later in the summer, you might see 2 feet of those pipes sticking out of the water, because those pipes are anchored all the way down into the glacial till and the clay below this part. We're also in a part of the bog right through here where you can push a sampler down through 60 feet of lake sediments before you hit the bottom of the bog, the bottom of the lake. We have river otter that play in this stream, which is relatively new. River otter have really moved back into this area when I started at the field station a long time ago, in 1980. There were no river otter in this area. And now they're relatively common. People all over here who have little ponds, little almost drainage ditches running through their property will start to report river otter. And probably the first place they came back in this area was the field station. But you see there's slides on the ice in the winter in the snow, and I stood here. I usually when I come out the boardwalk alone, I'm kind of on a mission, and I'm going. One day I was just taking my time, and I came down the boardwalk, and when I came around the curve here, I just caught the glimpse of an animal going into the water. And I walked to this spot, and there was a river otter swimming south down the channel. And it went down about 50, 60 feet, and it turned around, came swimming back toward me. And as it swam underneath the bridge here, it turned on its back so that it could watch me and look at me.
Sure.
It swam to the north about 50 or 60 feet, turned around and came back and did exactly the same thing. Turned over on its back to look at me like I was what is this strange
Right,
thing?
yeah. not
That
known.
was so wonderful.
Yeah.
I think this is probably river otter's cat right here. Oh yeah, it is. It is. This is river otter poop. River otter poop is known for always being pretty runny, kind of diarrhea almost like stuff. So this is river otter poop. This is all pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And this has fish scales in it. You find fish scales and crustacean, what's the word I'm looking for? Crab shells in river otter poop. They do sit up here quite a bit. Yeah, I know it's not real attractive looking stuff, but
It's how you can tell animals are present without actually seeing them.
exactly. Wow, and this one was eating beetles or something. There's big carapace of beetles in it.
Nice.
Okay. Well, we're about to walk over one of the islands in the bog. You can see the dome of trees. That's a nice gravel island, and we can see from here, we can see the dome of trees on the island that's at the north end of Mud Lake, but actually surrounded by cattails and bulrushes. There's very little open water at the shore of that. But then down straight south of us, you see another kind of rounded dome of trees. And that is the island that is in Mud Lake, surrounded by open water. This time of year, you can see all that really well. When everything's fully leafed out, that island is not nearly as noticeable. In fact, you can see, from there you can see the upland that's along Cedar Sock Road and the far horizon. You actually can see the horizon of the trees that are at Cedar Sock Road where there's the public access to. Our other really early blooming sedges is the Penn sedge, Pennsylvania sedge, which is the most common upland sedge in our area. That often makes woodlands look kind of parkland, makes them look almost like they have this grassy area, and that's a sedge, Pennsylvania sedge, and it's actually past full bloom already. The stamens are all withered. Presumably fertilization has taken place.
Find it. There we go. There's one. One of the last flowers of the hepaticas. Flowers before it leaves out.
Early flowering, but not really one of our ephemerals because they keep their leaves. So. I think we're winning. You know, how beautiful the leaves are right now. Wow, what a beautiful pattern. Some kind of
We got another true spring ephemeral here. Yellow bellwort. And there's even a little sweat bee on it.
spring ephemerals out before the trees leave out so that they can get that full sunshine before the forest gets too dark. Pretty interesting strategy.
A few more hepaticas here. interesting to see the hepaticas on the north side of this berm, the ice shove, are still blooming, but the ones on the south side have already completed their bloom. Here's some May apples coming up. They'll get a white flower underneath. Only ones with 2 leaves will produce a flower, so these are all single-leafed young ones.
Here's one for you, and there's the flower bud.
A little early on that one.
So yeah, it's got to be divided at the top like that into 2 leaves to have a flower. Here's another one. These are the cotyledons from the, that is an ash seedling. I know it just from the shape of the cotyledons. And ash, they have compound leaves later, but their first leaves, the first leaves that they develop are simple. They're not compound. And the second set of leaves they develop will be maybe compound, but not have as many segments as the ultimate leaf. And so with all the emerald ash borer and pretty much no living ash around here anymore, you'd say, well, where did the seedling come from? And ash seeds can take 2 to 3 years to germinate and grow. So this is probably from a seed that was produced some years ago. The geologists look at this island in the bog, and they read the surface, this physical structure of this island as indicating that over the years since the glaciers were in this area, that the lake levels in this Cedaburg bog lake, that there were actually 3 distinctly different lake levels over time. The one lake level, they say, this is their interpretation, was just above the level of this island, which is why this island is so relatively flat, is that if for a long time lake levels were just a foot or 2 feet or 3 feet over the top of this island, wave action would have flattened this island. Then a second lake level was a little bit below that, at a level just below where we're standing, which would have been the level that pushed up this ice push ridge. As you look around the boundary of this island, you see that around the entire island there's a mound, and we're kind of just coming up onto it with the trail now. There's a low spot, a low area in the center, and then there's a mound before it really drops off. And that mound is an ice push ridge that the expansion and contraction of ice in the winter would have pushed this mound up as an ice push ridge. Then just below that is a flat terrace that rings the entire island, and that terrace would have been formed by yet another lake level, and there's a more minor ice push ridge just below that. So that would represent the current level in the bog. So they see this as indicating that over that periglacial, or during the time of the glaciers and post-glacial period, that there were some alterations to the outlet to the bog that actually caused 3 distinctly different lake levels over time. A lot of our ferns produce their spores just right on the leaves. So you find the little spore-bearing capsules right on the leaves. We have other ferns where the spores are produced in something that's a completely specialized different kind of leaf or a spore-bearing structure. And sensitive fern, which doesn't have any leaves up yet at this time of year. Here's the old leaf stalks of the sensitive fern from last year, and these are the spore-bearing leaves from last year. So these are the spores, and they keep those all winter long. And it's this time of year that they release those spores, and these are just full of. We need to find like a white sheet of paper or something, but you probably can't see that this is just dusted with spores, can you?
Yeah, a little bit. Looks like you just got a bunch of dirt.
Yeah, it just looks kind of dirty, but they're just releasing their tiny, tiny spores. And those are the things in this that are going to go. Those spores are haploid, have one copy of every chromosome, and those are going to produce a little bitty flat green piece of tissue that's going to make the eggs and sperm that will unite, fertilize to make the sensitive fern that we usually look at. And I have every once in a while, if I've really searched around, I've been able to find fern gametophytes. Those little bitty-
Are these the fiddleheads coming up for sensitive fern?
Oh yeah, yeah, I bet they are. Oh, beautiful. It's that little sweet white violet. Yeah, I guess they are coming up just a little bit. Look at those.
Oh, sure.
I didn't even see those.
They blend in so well.
I
with
know. We should be able to find something amazing here, because Kate Redmond always has found something amazing on this dead stump here. This makes me think, man, I've been around a long time. When I started at the field station, this stump and this log was a living silver maple tree.
Wow.
And silver maple's kind of fast rotting, soft wood.
Yeah.
But it was still alive. Died presumably just of old age. And Kate always manages to find something on this log. Like, for example, I guess it'd be too early in the season maybe to spot them, but she has found round-leaved sundew on this log. I think more than one species of orchid over the years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's this? Oh, wow. One of our, well, not one of, our worst invasive species in the bog is glossy buckthorn. And the Friends of Cedaburg Bog have raised somewhere around $400,000 over recent years to do control projects, controlling glossy buckthorn in the bog. And the only known control method that we have to use is to actually send a crew into the bog and cut every individual stem and treat the cut stems with herbicide. So we really can only do that for the bigger fruiting size stuff, and then figure we're going to have to come back. And we're in that phase now where we're going back to places we've done before. And we have treated this area for glossy buckthorn before, and it's almost time to come back and get the glossy buckthorn that are now getting up close to where they're fruiting size. And what I wanted to show you here was, I know it's horrible, it's glossy buckthorn, but you see this little clump of stuff right here?
Mm-hmm.
There are mice that cache seeds,
Oh.
that collect a whole bunch of seeds and cache them in one place, and those are all glossy buckthorn
wow.
seedlings. I'm pretty sure if I yank that out, which I can do because it's an invasive plant. Look, these are all individual. Oh, look at this. It's so cool. I mean, it's not cool because it's glossy buckthorn, but it's cool because it's mice that did it.
Yeah.
But look at this.
Wow. It's amazing they all germinated.
And that had to be a mouse's cache of seeds, and then probably something happened to that mouse.
Right.
An owl or a hawk got it or something.
Never got back to it.
Is that amazing or what?
Oh.
If you, whoever's watching this video, if you're someone who is interested in some plant, or especially if you're on your own property controlling an invasive or working on it, don't ever forget to at some point dig it up, see what it looks like underground. It's amazing how many times I've encountered graduate students who have worked on a plant for 2 years, and I've said, what does it look like underground? And they said, oh, I don't know, I never dug one up. I said, well, you only know, you only know half the plant if you haven't dug it up.
Right.
You haven't seen what it looks like underground. And as a matter of fact, the buckthorns have kind of real distinctive looking root systems underground. And this one still has the seed capsule attached to it. Okay, well.
You just
good.
saved someone work.
If somebody asks me what I did today, I can say I killed about 100 buckthorn.
Yeah.
They'll think I was really productive. Glossy buckthorn. Oh, there's a little wild strawberry blooming. A whole little patch blooming. Oh, look at this. Whoa, flower, that's beautiful. Strawberries are in the rose family. And the rose flower plan is pretty uniform through the whole family, and these are definitely on the simple rose flower plant. Are you getting the one with that?
I'm trying to find it. Oh, there we go.
That little.
The sun with the white.
That's a tiny, tiny little bee, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Iris. There's a lot of lake sedge right in here. Bigger, coarser sedge. This is is that gold thread?
Possibly.
What a delicate little flower.
Mm-hmm.
And the little sweet white violets, which are real fragrant. If I've got the right sometimes they're so little it's hard to. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. No, even I mean
You gotta do it.
they're so fragrant that you get the scent even above the
Wow.
scent of the peat
Right.
and the moss that you're right next to. But yeah, it smells one. All of these species of things in the blueberry family, the ericad family, that have these little bellflowers. They all have what's called buzz pollination. Their little flower is pollinated mostly by big bumblebees, and the stigma sticks right out the end of that little bell. There's a little cap-shaped stigma, and the bee comes up to get a nectar reward, and it has to hover upside down, which bees can do. They can actually fly and hover upside down. But the flower stalk it's not stout enough to actually support the weight of the bee, so it can't just grab onto that flower and hang there and suck the nectar. It grabs the flower, but it has to buzz its wings in order to support itself or to hold itself up. And the stamens are different in this. Instead of opening in slits, they have pores at the end of the stamen where the pollen is, just like a little salt or pepper shaker. And so the pollen stays inside the stamen until a bee comes and buzzes. And when the bee comes, it grabs onto the flower, and the first thing it does is it just pulls that female part, the stigma, right down into its belly that has all that pollen on it. And it buzzes and gets the pollen load deposited on it. And there's whole groups of plants. It's called buzz pollination that have that.
I think the gentians are part of that too.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, there are some gentians that have that. Yeah.
All right, this concludes our hike on the boardwalk into the Cedaburg Bog. We hope you enjoyed it and as much as we did and learned a little something too. Today we were on the UW-Milwaukee Field Station Boardwalk. This is private property and public access is prohibited at this portion of the bog unless you're accompanied by field station staff or attending a Friends of the Cedaburg Bog event. There are, however, 2 public access points that you can get into the Cedaburg Bog on your own time. You will still see the same plant species that we were mentioned in this video at these 2 points. On the north side, there is the Watts Lake Boardwalk off of Highway 33. And on the south side, off of Cedar Sock Road, there's another access with a boardwalk to Mud Lake. Remember to follow social distancing protocols when you visit the bog and keep yourself safe as well as others. We look forward to being able to see you all in person at future hikes and events when it is safe to do so. But for right now, we will continue to put out videos and emails and Facebook posts on social media with phenological events that are happening at the bog. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll hope to see you soon.